well, I did not expect to get emotional like that. But I think, what Crystal's talking about is partnerships, right? And that's what it's all about. This week is Global Entrepreneurship Week, and that's part of why I thought Crystal's story was so pertinent, is that this story of teams coming together, communities coming together, that is entrepreneurship. And it does take more. It takes time, it takes money, it takes community. And so I'm so grateful that we have people like Crystal, people like you, that are making these things happen in our communities. So thank you, thank you. For our keynote tonight, you all probably already have met the speaker. Cris Gastner has been with CEDA for over 14 years. He has dedicated his life to helping entrepreneurs, to helping small communities be successful. He's from a small community, and he's passionate about small communities. After our annual meeting, we had many people come up to us and talk about Chris's statements that he had made about starting from no, and why starting from no is such a challenge that we see, not just in small communities, in every community, in every business. It's so easy to start from no, but it takes so much energy to get to, let's talk about if this can happen and how this can happen. And so because so many people were interested in that, and it moved them, I talked with Cris and asked if there was any way that he could expound on that he could talk a little bit more about what starting from no looks like and how we can avoid that. So I'm very excited about his presentation tonight, and I hope that it will inspire all of you to understand that anything is possible in your community, in your business, irrespective of how many people work with you and for you. You can accomplish amazing things. So with that, I'll hand the microphone over to Cris Gastner, CEDA's Senior Vice President.
So what's going to happen is everybody's going to start to cry, and then you're going to have me come up here and talk, right? That's what's going to happen. This is not how we have the schedule. Oh my goodness. Let's see. All right, I have papers, and for those of you that know me at all, I never speak from papers. So the fact that I have notes and a lot of things that I want to tell you should have you all very worried now. This event, over the years, has become very near and dear to my heart, and I think to the hearts of all of our staff. It's our chance to get to say thank you to some very important people, some superstars for their communities. All the people that are sitting at the tables in front of me are those superstars. And to get the chance to stand up here and share some thoughts with you, I can't tell you how humbling that is, but I appreciate that. And when Joanna asked me, I said, yeah, absolutely. I have a few things that I'd like to say. I'm a pretty quiet guy, so I don't know, if I can fill some time, but I might be able to do that. I guess I should start with maybe a disclaimer. A few of the people that I talked about my presentation with said there may be some innuendo or some double entendre or some stuff in there, and to be honest, I mean, there's some of that stuff in there. So it's not intended to offend, it's intended to make a point. I think our goal with this event is for you guys that are out in these communities every day, that are working really hard to make a difference and do cool stuff in your communities, to give you some energy to draw upon, some ideas and some passion to draw upon and go back to your communities and continue that great work. And so I'm trying to figure out, as I wanted to say this, like, how can I help them remember it, or what kind of impact can I make? And so what I thought is, instead of just talking about working from no and the power of yes, I wanted to illustrate a few other points along with that. And so I titled my presentation, Relationship Counseling. Makes sense, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about. But we're not talking about relationships with your partner. We're talking about relationships with your community. Our chambers and our visitors bureaus and our EDAs and our mayors are all working really hard to portray our communities in the best lights possible, right? They're our champions. Marketing 101 tells us that what we need to do is differentiate ourselves from our competition. Brand strategists are telling us what we need to do is create a memorable identity. And site selectors are saying what we need to do is promote our economic advantages. I think all of those are valid strategies, right? But as I thought about them, the one common thread that I thought was missing among all of them is heart, is emotion. Like, we should be able to say that we love the communities that we live and work and do business in. We love them, right? We should be proud of that. So we should be able to say it. Just by uttering that word, I love my community. I live in Lake City. I love Lake City. Shell, I believe black and gold? Black and orange, right?
Orange and black.
Orange and black, exactly. I love my community. And I'm a champion for my community because I love it so. Just by saying, I love Lake City, it makes other people say, why does he love Lake City? Maybe I love Lake City too. The other community members, the other people around me, they're like, this kid has a passion for his community. And I want to grab onto some of that, and I want to be part of that. It's contagious. When other people hear you talking about loving your community, they're curious. Why do you love your community? Each one of us love our community, even if we're from the same community. Shell and I are both from Lake City. We probably love the community for different reasons. And that's okay. We can all have our own reasons to love our community. I think it's important to understand that for all of us, we're probably bigger ambassadors for our community than we actually realize. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people that their touch point with a certain community is the gas station attendant when they picked up gas at Quick Trip and they went in to pay for it. That's their touch point with the community. And if that person doesn't feel the love, that's the opinion that they get for their community. All of us in our daily lives are much bigger ambassadors for our communities than we really understand. That being said, just because you're from a community, like I grew up in Lake City, and I love Lake City because I'm back there. But just because I'm from Lake City doesn't mean that I love it more than anybody else. In fact, we took a trip to Fargo, a couple years ago now, and a best practice visit, because we had heard the reputation that Fargo has right now is it's a great place for tech startup. And they're doing a great job in young professional recruitment and maintaining students from NDSU, keeping them there in Fargo. And as we were parts of conversations about workforce in southeastern Minnesota and beyond, whether it's Rochester or Minneapolis area, and I was like, we're struggling getting young professionals to want to come to Minneapolis or to Rochester because they say climate and weather sucks. You're in the middle of nowhere. There's nothing to do. You're not Chicago. You're not New York. So, why are we coming? God, if that's what we're getting in Rochester and Minneapolis, how on earth are they being successful in this in Fargo, North Dakota? Because all of those arguments, we can be real, are worse in Fargo, North Dakota. It's not a slam on Fargo, it's just even further away from the bluffs, and it's colder, more snow, all that stuff. So how are they having the success? So that's why I wanted to go up there. And I think when we went up there, we had a preconceived notion of what we would hear. It's like, well, we built some really cool buildings. They thought they were really fancy looking, and they said, wow, that's cool, we want to be there. That wasn't what we heard. What we heard was actually their struggle wasn't with the people that relocated to Fargo from San Diego. They thought people get off the plane from San Diego and they say, why on earth would we ever move to Fargo, North Dakota from San Diego, California? That wasn't the issue. The issue was when that person got off the plane from San Diego, California, and they met the first person from Fargo, the person that grew up in Fargo said to them what? Why on earth would you move from San Diego, California to Fargo, North Dakota? So what they did as a community, and I mean that in the strongest sense of the word, community, because it was a bunch of different groups that were all working in unison together to change that narrative. They changed it. They understood, like, okay, we don't have to go out externally, away from Fargo, figure out who's going to move here from San Diego, and talk to them while they're in San Diego and tell them what a great place Fargo is going to be. What we need to do is talk to our people, talk the language that we talk here in Fargo, and let the people know what a great place they live in. So they worked really hard to change the narrative. Now, I don't know if any of you have been to Fargo recently. Everywhere you go in Fargo, you see I Heart Fargo. T-shirts, mugs, window decals, it's everywhere. They are proud to say that they love their community. and it's infectious. That's why they're being successful in keeping those people from NDSU when they graduate. They've been part of this mantra for 4 years. I love Fargo too. I don't even know why. I got done with college. I don't remember much of college, but I do remember the mugs, right? So I love Fargo. I want to stay here, even though the weather's not the greatest. It's not Chicago. It's not New York. It's not LA. It's Fargo. But they're proud of that. When you talk about being proud of your community, you have to be genuine. Why? Because it's easy to spot phonies, right? We've all been in a conversation with somebody and you're like, where are you from? Or where do you live? Maybe that's a better question. Where do you live? Well, I live in XYZ community. Do you like it? Yeah, it's great. It's a convincing argument. If we're not genuine, people are going to spot it. When you talk about it, you should be able to cite specifics, because that's going to be the follow-up question, right? It's like, why do you love it so much? And if the answer is, it's great. And guess what? We're not genuine. But if the answer is, oh, I love Lake City. Why? Have you been there? Do you know how beautiful it is in the summertime? It makes me stay there in the wintertime. That's how beautiful it is. If you can cite specifics, they know you're being real. And what if, on the off chance, you can't do that? What if you genuinely can't say, I love the place that I live? What can you do? I think first and foremost, we should probably take a look at what it's lacking for us, right? Like, why can't I say I love my community? And figure out if there's a way that we can go out and help affect change to get it. Is there a way to make it lovable for me? Can I love the place that I live? Or, what's the other alternative? Maybe we move, right? Maybe we move. I hope you can love where you live. And if you can't, I hope you can find a spot that you can love. Because I'll tell you what, being proud of where you live feels really, really good. So what I'm talking about is tell me you love me. Not me personally. I mean, you can. It makes me feel good if you do. I mean, hoping at the end of this conversation, you'll tell me that you love the conversation. But tell your community that you love it. And when you do, my son would tell me differently, but I would say, in this case specifically, telling your community that you love it, public displays of affection are okay. They are okay. And right now we have, with social media, we have an abundance of awesome tools to get that done. And people are paying attention, right? Anywhere I go now, I'm checking Twitter, and I'm checking Instagram, and I'm checking Facebook, and I'm figuring out what those people that I'm connected to and those mediums are saying about the places that I'm going to visit, are telling me why they love their community, or why they loved a community that they visited. What about it I need to see? I go to that before I go to TripAdvisor or Yahoo Travel or any of those sites to get the reviews. I prefer finding out raw social media input on a community before I go there. They look at that, they look at our social media as the informal reviews for our communities. So if we don't say anything, if we love our communities, but we don't profess that love via those channels, nobody gets to see that. Nobody gets to feel that. Nobody gets to want to come to your community because they read how amazing you, the people that live there, think that it is. I think a lot of times we feel like building social capital is done the way that it's always been done. And it is still being done. I mean, social media may look a little different than your traditional Rotary meeting or Kiwanis meeting, where we get together and we unite around a cause or a community. We can do that in social media, and we can do it much, much bigger and much, much easier. And we can do it without sacrificing our local Rotary Club or our local Kiwanis Club. We can be part of all of that. Get out there as much as you can and profess your love for your community. Let's see other people. Sometimes we get so wrapped up in our own communities that we're afraid to leave. It's the greatest place on earth. I love Lake City. It's the greatest place on earth. Why would I ever go anywhere else? Well, sometimes it's good. Sometimes it's good to go into other communities and pay attention when you get there. Pay attention to these communities that you visit, you have a great time, or you fall in love with. You're not cheating on your community. All right? You're not. You are bringing ideas and energy and passion that can be put into action to make your community even better than it already is. See if there are things that you can bring back to your communities. It doesn't mean specific, maybe sometimes it means specific examples. We go out as an organization now, and we do best practice visits to communities all across the region, all across the country, and our goal with these visits is to find unique organizations that are doing cool stuff. Economic development and community development for my colleagues here and for all of you that are warriors and superstars in that yourselves. It's different today than it was a decade ago. There are still parts of it that are the same, but it's different today. The community development department and the economic development department are melded together now, right? Because society is so mobile that people are choosing where they want to live before they're choosing where they want to work. Back in the day, it was, I'm going to go to this job, it's going to be a great job, I worked there for 30 years, I'm going to retire in this community because of this great job, that's where I'm going to stay. Now, I can live in Harmony, Minnesota, and I can work in Hong Kong, right? Because of the information age. So people are looking for their communities, the places that they can love and live, before they decide where they're going to start their business, or where they're going to work for an employer, and whatnot. So what we need to do, as those people that are championing this community and economic development work for our communities, is to get out and see other places, find out what makes them great, and bring some of that energy back. So, some specific examples. We went to Colorado. And while we were visiting Colorado, we were in one of the communities, larger community, Boulder, much larger than any of the communities that we work in. But we were walking with one of the economic development directors for the county and walking down one of their smaller Main Street areas in Boulder. And there was a one-screen movie theater. And I was kind of thinking to myself, as we were driving in, out on the interstate, I saw the megaplex, right? Like the 17-screen stadium seating, seats that recline, and I can't stay awake for any movies anymore, those kinds of theaters. I saw that on the interstate. How can this one-screen little movie theater in their downtown area survive? So I asked the question, and the guy said, he goes, it's not just surviving, it's thriving, because they figured out their niche. This is a family place, and they were going through a huge renovation when we were walking past, and that's what sparked my question. He said on Saturday mornings, one of the first things that they did was realize their market specifically was young families. So little kids on Saturday mornings, what do? Watch cartoons, the same thing we did, right? I mean, they may be different cartoons, but they still get up and they watch cartoons and they eat their cereal. So this theater, this one-screen theater, said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to have an all-you-can-eat cereal bar and show the Saturday morning cartoons on the theater screen. People are lined up around the block for this idea, this concept. And those people are so passionate that when the theater needed to upgrade its equipment and upgrade its seating to remain competitive, guess who their partners and investors were? It was those families, right? Giving money to say, hey, we don't want you to go away because our kids think this is the coolest thing on earth, because they come here on Saturday mornings. So we brought that idea back. It wasn't specifically, it was more about like, hey, these little projects, these little small businesses, they matter, they make a huge impact. But we have some communities that have one-screen movie theaters that aren't that far away from the megaplexes with the did I mention the reclining seats so I can't stay awake for any movies anymore? Yeah. They're not that far away, so how do we keep them alive? And our communities took that and said, you know, that was going on in Boulder, Colorado. They didn't say, Boulder's way bigger than we are, we can't do that. No, they said, that's a great idea. We can do that too. So it could be something specific, like that kind of a concept. They didn't do it on all-you-can-eat cereal bar and show a cartoon. But they took that concept and said, we're going to do something like that that fits our niche. And it could give you a renewed sense of appreciation for what you have, right? I used to work in the golf industry, and I ran a golf course. We had been a private golf course, and we became a public golf course. We expanded from 9 to 18 holes, and we had a membership base of about 200 members. And those 200 members could tell me, I think, when a blade of grass on a certain fairway was bent the wrong direction. That's how well they knew this course. And finally, I'm like, guys, like, you know, you are complaining about parts of this course that you feel are up to par. You need to go and see some other courses. Because when you go and see some other courses and realize not only are the blades of grass on whatever fairway bent the wrong direction, some of those fairways in those other courses don't even have grass in spots, all right? It made them appreciate what they had way more than they did before they went out and saw what else was going on in the world. I think that's important. I think getting out there and seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly for some of these other communities is important. But that being said, we got to be careful when we do that we don't fall into the trap of the grass is always greener, right? I think we've all probably been in, maybe we've all had conversations about our communities where we say, oh gosh, we're really struggling. If only we were XYZ community, fill in the blank. Oh gosh, we're really struggling. If only we were Lanesboro. Oh gosh, we're really struggling. If only we were Rochester. If only we were Minneapolis. If only we were Chicago. If only we were, right? The grass is always greener. If you go to Lanesboro, they have a lot of great things in Lanesboro. They also have a lot of struggles and a lot of challenges and a lot of conversations and a lot of work goes into having the things that they have for their community. We don't get to see that on a daily basis. We just get to see the good stuff, right? When we go to visit for a day, it's like, oh, it's beautiful. We got theater and tourism, people up and down Main Street. It's great. They have it great. We don't have it that good. Well, they're working really hard, and we don't get to see it. When you do that, you focus only on the shortcomings. You'll focus for your own community on, we don't have blank. So if only we were Chicago. We don't have this. We don't have that. And it limits and it stifles our creativity and the ability that we have internally to go and get that stuff. We spend more time lamenting what we don't have instead of figuring out ways to go and get what we want. I think, I should finish with this in that part. I think that constant, let's call it benchmarking, against other communities, saying, gosh, they're doing it really well in XYZ community, that's important. That's important to challenge us to continue to be better as a community every day. But what it shouldn't do is gauge your happiness with your own community. That shouldn't be the gauge. You shouldn't be unhappy with your community because somebody else is happy with theirs, or because you're happy when you go and visit somebody else's community. Find some of that energy that they have and bring it back. Do you think I'm sexy? Or cool? I asked my son when I was putting this together, I'm like, can I still say cool? Is cool still cool? Or is bad good? And he was trying to explain it to me and I got lost in it, so I just went with, do you think I'm sexy? What's cool and what's not cool? We're challenged with that every day, because it changes every day, right? And so what I've realized, I think, is that chasing cool, it's not cool. It's not, because you can't ever catch it, and even if you're lucky enough to catch it for a second, you lose it the next second. So chasing it and trying to change who your community is to be the next it community, to be the next sexy community, the next cool community, it's not going to work. In a bigger scale than we work in, I don't know, those of you that know anything about Austin, Texas, keep it weird in Austin. Austin, Texas, for a decade, was the it, hip, cool, sexy place to go. If you talk to somebody and like, hey, starting a job, moving to Austin, Texas, like, oh, that's the coolest guy I met ever. Because he's moving to Austin. I don't even know what he did, but he's moving to Austin, Texas. Could be working at the Walmart in Austin, Texas. I have no idea, but he's now the coolest guy that I've ever met because he's moving to Austin. Austin was so cool, it was ridiculous. right? It went on for about a decade. And more people started moving to Austin because it was the it place, the cool place, the sexy place to go. And eventually, so many people moved to Austin, what did it become? Uncool, exactly. It became uncool. It was unhip. Everybody's here. Now I have to go someplace else because that's what you do when you're hip. You go to the places that not everybody's going, right? So Denver became the cool place. Now if I talk to somebody that's moving to Denver for a job, he's way cooler than the Austin, Texas guy, right? But even for Denver, they'll soon lose that. They'll soon lose that designation. But if you talk to people from Denver, what I think is really cool, they don't care, right? They don't care if they're cool, they don't care if they're not cool, they don't care if I think they're cool, or if anybody else, the guy that's moving there for the job, they don't care if he thinks it's cool. They don't care. And guess what? That's what makes them cool. That's why people love Denver, because they're not out saying how cool they are. If you start talking about how cool you are as a community, or how sexy, or how hip, you're instantly uncool. You instantly lose it. It's a valuable commodity. To be the it community, the cool community, the sexy community, it's valuable, but it's fleeting. And it's hard to catch. So you can spend a lot of time and waste a lot of energy and waste a lot of money trying to be that next it community. And when you get there, you're there for a second and it goes away. Is that money and energy and time wasted? I don't know. But it seems like a lot of work for a short payoff. I don't even know how to deal with paper. See, guys, I'm telling you, from now on, no sheets. Let's experiment. Maybe spice things up a little bit. See, there's something that I think maybe you don't know. Embrace the temporary. Would be some advice that I would give you, having done this for a few years. I think we get so wrapped up in economic and community development circles on these huge community-changing projects, these huge permanent projects in our community, that we spend all of our time working on changing the entire landscape of our community. It's a great thing when it happens, right? It's a great thing to get some of these accomplished, but they take so much time and so many resources that we probably miss out on some other opportunities along the way. They're important, and they're fantastic, but a lot of times they require a ton of time to build consensus in that community because they're permanent or very long term, if not permanent. Again, I live in Lake City. Right now we're going through the discussion of a highway project in Lake City with Highway 61. It's been Highway 61, 4-lane highway in the community forever. And they're talking about changing that to a 3-lane highway, doing some beautification around it and whatnot. And building consensus, if you talk to the people from Lake City, it is hard, right? Not everybody sees the same vision, and that's okay. That's okay. But it takes a lot of time to build that consensus. So one of the things that what I'm talking about is embracing the temporary. So sometimes, maybe what we could concentrate on, or not to lose focus on some of those big projects, those long-reaching projects, but maybe some of the successes that we can have are more temporary projects, smaller projects. Things like, gosh, we have this eyesore of a building in our downtown, and it's been that way for decades and decades and decades. We just need to do something. We've got to get somebody in there so they fix it up. Maybe that discussion could be on a community mural that goes on the side of that building. We talked a lot about community murals, and different communities are doing them, and some do them very well, some not so well. The great thing about a mural, right, is that it's temporary. If you put the mural up and you can celebrate it for a while, and you start looking at it like, yeah, the faces look weird. Nobody here looks like that anymore. And I'm not even sure where they got the building for this. That they've replicated. I don't know where that's from. What can they do? They can paint over it and make it a gray wall again, right? Just that easy. So building consensus for a project like that is much easier than changing their highway leading through their downtown from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. Much easier because it can be undone. These projects are usually smaller, they usually take less time and resources, and they're limited to a finite length of time, usually. Other communities like, gosh, we have this area, we'd like to turn it actually eventually into a green space, but it's a street right now. So to vacate that street and turn it into green space is making a lot of people nervous. Maybe what they could do is close that section of street for a farmer's market for a couple months during the summer, see how it affects traffic flow, so that they can describe to their citizens that are concerned about it how it's going to affect the traffic flow. And at the end of the summer, they can change it back, open the street again, and nobody's the worse for wear. Those landscape, huge scope projects that I was talking about are very important. But I'll leave you with this. Temporary tattoos in Las Vegas were created for a reason. These types of projects can fill gaps in your community. Fill the gaps in your community, I think, is important. What do I mean by fill the gaps in my community? It can mean spaces, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, but what I'm really talking about is figuring out ways, small ways, temporary ways maybe, that we can fill the gap between the city that we want and the city that we can afford, right? We all work in this business, and we know that there's no community, maybe, if there is a community in here that has an infinite budget, if you could just raise, no? Nobody, all right. Well, if we can't find a community with an infinite budget, we're all going to have to figure out the gap between the city that we want and the city that we can afford. Some of these projects can fill that gap. They can give us a glimpse of the things that we want, not cost us a ton of money, be temporary in their length of life, and give us a glimpse of impacts on our community, both good and bad, so that we can be smarter about the more permanent, more long-term, bigger scope project decisions that we were talking about. Take an inventory of your community's underused spaces. That could be unused spaces, it could be empty storefronts, it could be little corners of blocks that's like, gosh, it's a weird shape, so we can't really build a building on it, but it looks weird if we concrete the whole thing, so it just sits there. I think in every one of our communities we have spaces like that. Take an inventory of those and figure out if there are ways that we can activate them. Unique ways, odd ways, things that make people go, oh, that's really cool. That's really cool what they did there. They created a performance area out of wood shipping pallets. There's one idea that I saw. They set up these bikes that you pedal, and it actually projects a movie onto the wall, the blank concrete wall in front of me as long as I pedal the bike. I stop pedaling, the movie disappears. Kind of cool, right? These are just odd spaces and different little downtowns and main streets along the way, and they figured out how to activate those spaces and turn them into assets for their community when they were just eyesores before. Those are empty buildings. We all have an empty building here or there, one that's not being used right now. And I've seen a lot of communities where all of a sudden you see those windows and those storefronts filled with artwork from the local school, or pictures of what the buildings used to look like in the past, or any of a million different things. Some curtains so that people don't understand that behind them there's just an empty building, maybe under reconstruction or something like that. It activates them. It gives people something to look at when they come to your community, when more than likely if they came to your community and there wasn't anything done there, there'd be a building they ignore. Unfortunately, or worse, would be a building that they remember, right? You have a bunch of awesome buildings, a bunch of awesome businesses, and the one that the person that came to visit remembers is the empty one in the corner that nobody's using and nobody loves. That happens. Don't fixate on a particular use for a space. We took another visit, we went down to Colorado Springs. One of the places we stopped in Colorado Springs purely for research purposes was a brewery. It was an old schoolhouse. It was an old schoolhouse that one section they had turned into a brewery, one section they had turned into a coffee roastery, and one section they had turned into a whiskey distillery. I called it heaven. That's not what they call it. But it was an old school building. Working in rural communities, there are a lot of former school buildings, right, that we've seen projects go in. A lot of them are apartment projects, great projects. What that particular project in Colorado Springs showed me is that not every old school building has to become apartments. It's not to say they have to become breweries, coffee roasteries, and distilleries, although think of how cool that would be. But they don't all have to become apartment buildings. It's just looking at things differently and not fixating on, oh, it's an old school building, we're not using it for school anymore, so now it becomes apartments. It can be. I mean, like I said, those are great projects, but it doesn't have to be. I think that's the important takeaway. These projects, these fill-the-gap projects in your community, they don't have to live forever, they don't have to last forever, but they can have an impact that lasts long beyond the finite amount of time that you set them up. That palette performance area, they set that up for like a 6-week festival that ran on the weekends in that community, and at the end of it, they took it away. But people kept talking about, oh God, that was so cool, and they created that band performance area for people to come in and do concerts on the weekends. That was so cool, let's do that again. What it does is, it knocks the cobwebs and the dust off some of those corners of our community that we forget about, or want to forget about, that we don't think about all the time. And it activates them and turns them into something cool that we can use to make people want to love our community as much as we do. This is a very famous scene from a very famous movie. I was going to show the clip, but I didn't want anybody to pass out. So we just went with this. And this is, one of the main reasons why I was really excited to get up and talk to you tonight. Well, not just to show you this picture and see how you react, but to talk about the power of yes. In that clip, Meg Ryan is screaming the word yes. I don't know why, but she's screaming the word yes, and the woman sitting at the table next to her when she finished said, you know what, I'll have what she's having. It's a funny part of that movie, but I think the message is very important. When we talk about no, and this is one of the things that I talked about at our annual meeting, because I think we can make a huge difference. I think every person in this room can make a huge difference by shifting some thought process when we're presented with new ideas and new thoughts. No is a fear response. No is a protective response. It's you see a 3-year-old that's about to pull a television off a stand onto themselves. You say, no, that's good, right? You should always say no in that case. Or you have a 17-year-old son that comes to you and says, hey Dad, I want to join a rock band. You say, no. It's a good use in my case. He doesn't want to join a rock band. He's got other ideas, but it's not about my son at all. So it's a survival instinct. Psychologist Ray Baumeister, I wanted to be legitimate, so I figured I better quote some psychologists, says that organisms that are better attuned to bad things would have been more likely to survive threats. Survival requires urgent attention to possible bad outcomes, but is less urgent with regard to the good ones. It's great. I'm glad that I read that. What does it mean? It means for us to know that bad things can happen to us in certain situations protects us, right? It's a good thing for us in certain situations. The problem is, he's talking about survival, right? Again, knowing that if I step in front of a train, that's not going to end well for me. So I shouldn't do that. I should say, nope, I'm not going to wait till it goes by and then I'm going to go, right? There's a difference between surviving and thriving. And when we use that same response, when we respond no, when we hear an initial idea, we're sometimes preventing ourselves from thriving. In contrast, when you start with yes, I think it energizes us. It energizes and sparks creativity, fuels trust, and allows us to progress further along the exploration of that idea or that project or the concept or the conversation at the very least. That doesn't mean that starting with yes means ending with yes. What it means when you start with yes is, yes, I'll consider what you're telling me and I'll look into it before I decide that it's not for me. Before I make that decision, I'll at least consider it, and I'll at least consider it from the possibility of doing it. Doesn't mean you say yes to everything, right? If I stood up here and I told you, what you guys got to do is say yes to everything, the first question I would say is, can I have $20? Because times the amount of people in this room, it would be a good day. The second thing I would ask you is, are you overwhelmed? And you would almost instantly be overwhelmed with the thought of saying yes to everything. What I'm asking you to do is to embrace the possibility of those ideas. Say yes to the possibility of those suggestions working for you. In the end, we do some research, we have some further conversation, we move the needle a little bit when it comes to the idea, and we find out it's not for us. Doesn't work. That's okay. That is okay. It's a powerful tool. Yes is a powerful tool. We need to use it wisely. If we don't, like any other gift, tool, it'll be overused and it will lose its effectiveness for us. Right now, it has the ability to be extremely effective. An unmistakable and welcome consequence is that we feel like we're all in it together, right? If somebody comes to us with an idea and our answer or our first response to them is, yeah, let's take a look at that, we're instantly bonded. We're instantly a team, right? We're instantly willing to say, I will look at this with you. I will consider this possibility of success with you. In the end, maybe we have to say it's not going to work. But in the beginning, we start out with this trust, and we start out with the ability to go from there and be creative, to come up with a way to make it so. That creativity, that energy is hard. It's hard to have an idea. It's hard to turn it into reality when you have an idea. Right, Crystal? It's hard. It takes a lot of energy. And what the problem with starting from no is, or what it does to us, is it makes us expend more energy to get from no to maybe. From no to I'll consider the possibility that we can do this. If we don't waste that energy, if we start with let's at least consider the possibility, think of how much more energy we got to get from let's consider the possibility to let's figure out how to get this done to let's celebrate together at Four Daughters the successes of our communities. That's a much better expenditure of energy, don't you think? Don't you think? Again, you don't have to say yes right away. I'm not telling you to say yes to every opportunity that comes your way. What I'm asking you to do, what I'm challenging you with, what I started the conversation about at our annual meeting, is just not blurting out no, right? Just don't start with, nope, it's not going to work. We tried it 10 years ago, didn't work then, won't work now. I think I saw it illustrated when I had a group of 17-year-old boys in my house working on some math problems and algebra problems, and they were struggling. And I tried to give them a different way to look at the problem in order to get to the answer. Some of them got it right away. I'm like, oh yeah, that's much better. I can understand it better. I know where we're trying to get, and I get there. A couple of them struggled with it still. And their response to me was, I can't get it, I didn't know it before, and I'm never going to know it. How do I get past that? So think about that in terms of projects that come through your doors, your community. If it's, nope, we've never done that before, so we can't do it now. Or we can't do it in the future. How hard it is to get past that. Size doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. What do I mean by that? Size doesn't matter. I think if you look at the work that we do as an organization, it illustrates itself over and over and over again. Size doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how big your city is. It doesn't matter if you are a community, Harmony, Minnesota, 1,300 people. If you're Rochester, Minnesota, 100,000 people plus, right? There's always somebody bigger than you. If you're Minneapolis, you're not Chicago. If you're Chicago, you're not LA. If you're LA, you're not New York. If you're New York, you understand what I'm saying, right? There's always somebody bigger than you. I don't know who's bigger than New York. Beijing, thank you. There's always somebody bigger. So size doesn't matter. We all struggle with some of the same things. They might be on different levels, but they're the same concepts. They're the same challenges that we all face. Small towns can do big things, right? Everybody across, well, at least the state of Minnesota, I think probably in the upper Midwest, everybody is fighting the daycare shortage. The city of Stewartville, small town. It's not Rochester, it's not Minneapolis, it's not Fargo. But they had somebody who was willing to come forward with an idea, and they worked with that person and nurtured that person and nurtured that idea and helped them achieve it. It's not the cure to the daycare shortage, right? One center is not the cure to the daycare shortage, but it's a start, and it's a dang good one, and we'll keep, using that momentum forward for sure. Small towns can do big things. Size doesn't matter. Small businesses make a huge difference, because it's small businesses that turn into bigger businesses that turn into big business. Small businesses, like family-owned little machine shop, Harmony Enterprises, that now sells all over the world. Small businesses make a big difference, especially in our rural communities. They have a huge impact. These small businesses that start, 1 or 2 jobs, 5 jobs, in a community like Beijing, get lost in the shuffle. But for us, make a huge difference. Because when you start adding them together, they add up to a pretty significant portion of our population in our communities. Small businesses make a huge difference. Size doesn't matter. Small projects have a large impact. Remember some of the things I was telling you about before, right? Finding little isolated spots in our unused spots in our communities, energizing them, activating them, and turning them into assets for our communities. Those small projects have a huge impact on how people envision our communities, or how people consider our communities to be beautiful, or to fall in love with our communities. They have a huge impact. Small projects have a huge impact. Size doesn't matter, right? We are warriors for rural communities in economic and community development. When you came here tonight, you probably didn't think, what I'm going to do is join an army. Well, you did. You came here tonight. You're celebrating with us the successes of rural communities that are a part of our organization, that are very important to us and what we do. And you've joined an army. And I don't know, any other superhero geeks like me in the room? I mean, I love superhero movies. I love the Justice League. I love the Avengers. I love all those guys. And when I was a kid, people asked me, who's your favorite superhero? And it was Superman, because he was, superhuman strength and all the X-ray vision and heat vision and all that stuff. That was really cool. Superpowers are really cool. Today, you know who my favorite superhero is? Iron Man. Tony Stark. You know what his superpower is? He's an entrepreneur and an inventor. Because without those two things, Iron Man doesn't exist, Tony Stark doesn't exist, he's just a rich guy, right? He created Iron Man. He's an inventor and an entrepreneur. Those are the people that are in this room. Those are the people that we get to work with on a daily basis. They're superheroes. We're superheroes. We're part of something much bigger, and we're accomplishing really big things. One little step at a time. One little step at a time, we're accomplishing big things. Size doesn't matter. I hope that you can take something away from this. I want it to be fun. I want it to be interesting. Again, I'm humbled by getting to stand in front of you, because I really feel like you guys are superstars. Genuinely. doing amazing things for your communities every day. So with that, thank you so much for coming, and I'll turn the microphone back over to Joy for some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Cris. I mean, I think all of us can really relate to what he's talking about, not just the relationship advice side of it, but I think it's important to remember that our mission at CEDA is really all about small businesses and small communities. But you guys are here today because you believe in that too. And so we're grateful that you took time out of your day to spend it with us and celebrate with us. Grateful for people like Crystal that are willing to invest in their communities. And we're grateful for the partnerships that we have with everyone in this room. So thank you so much, and I think you guys deserve a round of applause. I would encourage everybody in this room to follow us on social media. Our handles are listed on all of your programs, but we post all of our events. We host a lot of events to educate entrepreneurs and just kind of keeping tabs on some of the projects that we're doing. So I would definitely encourage all of you to follow us on there. A couple of other things I just want to touch base on. We do have some party gifts for you guys. So please be sure to grab one of those on your way out. Again, we're so grateful that you spent your night with us. So we do have your breakfast covered in the morning. So that is over there. Cris is holding one of the example bags. So please be sure to grab one of those, or I'm going to literally be eating coffee cake for the next 2 weeks. We understand that this is, we did want to get things moving so that you guys have a little bit more time to network. So we are going to keep the bar open. So that's good. Tim's clapping for that. So please feel free to stick around and grab yourself another drink. One thing that they did want me to tell you at the venue as well is that there are a number of creme brulees left. So if anybody is interested in eating another creme brulee, they are located in the room where the food was at. So please eat some creme brulee. It does not travel well, so it needs to be eaten before you leave. And finally, again, just thank you guys for being here. Thank you for your time, your energy, your passion. We're so excited to be working with you, and we know that we can continue to accomplish great things because size doesn't matter, right? We hope all of you will take that message back with you. Size doesn't matter. One thing I did promise that we would do is we would buy somebody a bottle of wine before we left, so I'm gonna let Ron draw one final number. Oh, apparently we have a basket too, so Ron's gonna draw 2 numbers.
62, 63.
All right, 62, 63. You are the lucky winner. So you can either choose to take, there's a basket left over there, or we will get you a bottle of wine. Whichever one you'd like. Bottle of wine. All right, Ron will take care of that for you. All right, Crystal, I'm going to have you draw the final number here. We have one basket left in the bag. 62.55. 62.55. I got a winner? Awesome, perfect. So you have won a basket of goodies from Jimmy's Salad Dressings and Dips. So you can come over and claim your prize. Well, thank you guys again so much for coming tonight. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy. I appreciate your attention. And I know that this is going to be the start to another great year. Thank you.